Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I lead an institution that was founded on the principle that the most important decisions, the decisions affecting most people's lives, the decisions involving the most public resources, the most consequential decisions, those kind of decisions should be made with the best available evidence. And so the topic of misinformation and how to overcome it obviously is central to the ethos of the RAND Corporation. We have two related streams of research underway, and I'm going to talk really about one of them, but I'll just let you know what the other one is. And that stream focuses on hostile disinformation techniques and how to counter them. So this is a traditional part of RAND's research on national security, political warfare, information operations, and so on. Much of this work is available to the public. It's unclassified. You can search for it on our website and download the publications in full. But I'm going to talk more about a relatively new stream of research, only about 3 years old, that is on a problem that we've come to call truth decay. We started using that term several years ago and documented it in a book that was published January before last. The purpose of the book was to try to advance a rigorous definition of what we thought we were seeing, the trends we were seeing, and then devise a conceptual framework that identified the causes of what we were seeing and the consequences, the linkages among them. Look at some historical parallels, because as I was talking about this phenomenon, many times the first question was, what's new? Haven't we experienced things like this before? And then finally, to outline everything we felt we didn't know but needed to know to reverse this process. And the book is here, and I told Mike that I was going to hawk it, even though we don't sell it, we give it away. And so you can download it in full for free. I'm old-fashioned. I like to read hard copy, and so talk to me if you're the same way. But let me just go briefly into what we mean by truth decay, because it sets up the framework for our continuing research. 4 trends. Basically, they are a declining agreement about objective, verifiable facts and the analytical interpretations of data. Lots of examples in the book. Vaccine, safety and benefits of vaccines is one that's in the news, but there's a lot of others in the book. The second is the blurring of the line between fact and opinion. And you see it in all different forms of media. Again, there are examples. The third trend is the explosion in the volume, and therefore we think the influence of opinion relative to fact. So, one quick description of this phenomenon is that when I was growing up, there was 1 hour of national news on television every day. Of course, now there's 24 hours, but there hasn't been a 24-fold increase in the number of facts reported, collected and reported. Most of that time filled with opinion, repetition of opinion, and ultimately opinions about opinions. And the final trend is a rather dramatic long-term decline in public trust in institutions, particularly institutions that are sources of information or have been sources of accuracy of information, particularly the government and the media. This is similar to other periods in history, and the book covers 3 of those. I won't go into that in the interest of time, but let me just summarize by saying, despite the similarities, we believe this period is different, and we explain why, and it's much more serious for a variety of reasons. It's serious because we believe truth decay is eroding civil discourse, which in turn leads to dysfunction and ultimately paralysis of government operations, which we think is reinforcing or even accelerating the decline in public trust in institutions, which is leading to disengagement and even detachment of citizens from the democratic processes and institutions that make our democracy function. There are a collection of causes. We've grouped them into 4 broad categories. The first, I think, unfortunately, in some ways, is human nature. We're wired with cognitive biases. And so that's the first, quite a bit of information in the book about that. The second, not surprising, is the dramatic changes in the information landscape. All of you are very familiar with this, and I know, discussed that over the last 2 days. The third is the failure of our education systems to keep pace with those changes. And the final cause is a growth in multiple kinds of polarization, not just political polarization, but social and economic polarization. These causes reinforce each other in many ways, and the result is that it's much more likely for all of us, compared to earlier generations, to live near, work with, go to the gym with, go to school with people who think alike. It's even more likely that we're marrying people who have common beliefs and common positions on issues. And so the conditions for the so-called bubbles to form, be sustained, and so on are improving with negative effects on the course of truth decay. So we are now marching down the research agenda we outlined in Chapter 6 of the book, and I'll just list a few of the things that you can wait and see some of our products. They'll start in May with the first one, but we've got some work on helping people understand and reduce or overcome cognitive biases. We're looking at what sources of information people do rely on most for news and explore the extent to which they consider different sources of information reliable. We're have multiple efforts looking at the reasons for the decline in trust in institutions. Some institutions have lost more trust than others, but we haven't found good explanations yet for why some lose more and why some are able to retain public trust. We have work underway on the policy, legal, economic, and technological responses that might address the problem of disinformation in conventional journalism. The benefit RAND has offices around the world, and I think this is going to be an area where international comparisons are going to be particularly useful. The next 2 volumes in this series that will come out, one is called Exploring Media Literacy Education as a Tool for Mitigating Truth Decay. But the one I think that will come out next that I'm eager to see the reaction to and what others could build on is entitled News in a Digital Age, Comparing the Presentation of News Information Across Media Platforms Over Time. And it examines how content of news media has changed over time and how it varies across sources. I think we all have a subjective or an anecdotal impression of how things have changed. We think this is going to be the first quantitative measure. We're using a text analytic technique and machine learning that we use actually in our work in the intelligence community for counterterrorism, to analyze counterterrorism communications, but we think it's going to be applicable to tracking changes in the content of news media. So that's to come as well. And I hope that lays some groundwork for discussion and for some of my other panelists to build on. So thank you.